Hi everyone, myself Dr. P. Soumya, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. In this session, I am going to cover the topic food chain and food web. So in this session, I am going to cover the topics what is food chain, types in food chain, significance of food chain, and differences between food chain and food web. So what is food chain? Food chain, it is the path by which energy passes from one living thing to another. So food chain means it is a path. Food chain, it is a path by which energy, so like heat energy and any energy, passes from one living thing to another living thing. So food chain means, if we see the diagram, so here sunlight, it is the energy, the heat energy, it is absorbed by the plants and these by the photosynthesis. So these plants are producing the energy, producing the products, and these are consumed by insects like grasshopper. This grasshopper, it is consumed by frog, and these frogs are consumed by some birds like eagle. So this is a food chain. In this, energy passes from one living thing to another living thing. So food chain means it is a path by which energy passes from one living thing to another living thing. So food chain, it is a energy flow. Food chain, it is nothing but it is a energy flow from one trophic level to another trophic level. So here the energy flow from one trophic level to another level, it is called as food chain. So it is a simple and direct. It is a simple flow and it is a direct energy flow. So food chain, it is an organism's energy role in an ecosystem. So in this, so producers, we have producers, consumers, and also decomposers. So producers, so these are examples of producers are plants and trees. Consumers, so we have secondary and primary consumers. So primary consumers, these will consume producers, and the secondary consumers and tertiary consumers, these living organisms consumes primary consumers. So this is about producers, consumers, and decomposers. Decomposers, examples of decomposers are microorganisms. All the microorganisms like fungi and bacteria, which decomposes the products, which decomposes the waste products into minerals. So producer, it can make its own food by converting the sun energy into chemical energy through photosynthesis. So producer means it is also called as autotroph. So means it will produce energy. It will produce, it will convert, it will make food or their own food by converting the sun energy and water into chemical energy. So through photosynthesis process. So this type of producers, this will take the sun energy and water and so and this carbon dioxide. So this will convert the sun energy into chemical energy through photosynthesis reaction. Source of all food in ecosystems. So here, so these are the, so these producers are source of food, all the food in ecosystem. So examples of these producers are terrestrial and also aquatic plants, algae. So these all are green plants, green. So these will convert sun energy into chemical energy, which is a source of food in almost all living things. So if it is see the diagram, so it is a producer, that is a grass. So this is consumed by the primary consumer like grasshopper. So this primary consumer, it is consumed by the secondary consumer like birds. So these birds are consumed by tertiary consumers like a snake and other. So here, and this is consumed by predator. So after that, this waste products from the, so these all the living things, this is decomposed by using decomposers. So decomposers, this will give a waste product to minerals. So which are useful for the growth of plants and trees. So this is about food chain and producers. This producers also called as autotrophs. So producers, these make their own food and green plants. So here we know that producers make their own food by photosynthesis process. So green plants use energy from the sun, and these are using the sun energy, and these are making the food. So which are useful for all the living organisms. So producers are on the bottom of the food chain. So producers, so these are producing the food. They are producing their own food by sun energy, by using sun energy. So these are at the bottom of the food chain. Producers, these are at the bottom of the food chain. So second is consumer. So this is also called as heterotroph. Producer also called as autotroph. Consumer also, this is also called as heterotroph. This cannot make its own food, so must eat other organisms to get energy. So second, the consumer, this cannot make its own food, so it must eat other organisms to produce, to get energy. So these are three types of consumers are there: primary consumer, secondary consumer and tertiary consumer. Primary consumer, so that eat producers. Primary consumers eat producers. So example of this primary consumer is caterpillar. Primary consumer example is caterpillar. So primary consumer, it will consumes the producers, autotrophs. Secondary consumers eats primary consumers. Secondary consumers, these organisms eats primary consumers. Example, robin, like birds. So tertiary consumer eats secondary consumers. Tertiary consumers are the consumers which eat secondary consumers. Example, hawk. So like snake and other. So here the consumers, these are also called as heterotrophs. So they cannot make its own food, so must eat other organisms to get their energy. So these are three types: primary consumer, secondary consumer and tertiary consumer. Primary consumers eat producers, example caterpillar and grasshopper. Secondary consumers eats primary consumers, example birds. So tertiary consumers eats secondary consumers like snake and hawk. So consumers also called as heterotrophs. So types of consumers. So we have three types of consumers. So here first classification is primary consumer, secondary consumer and tertiary consumer. So whereas types of consumers, we have three types, again three types: herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. Herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. So herbivore, it is also called as primary consumer. So another name of primary consumer is herbivore. It will eat plants. The consumer which eats plants, this is called as primary consumer. So herbivores, these animals who eat plants such as grasshoppers, rabbits, squirrel, deer and pandas, these are common herbivores. So the animals who are eating the plants such as, so examples of these herbivores are grasshopper, rabbit, squirrel, deer and pandas. So here examples of herbivores are, so some other examples are elephants, giraffes, cows, grasshopper, rabbits, gorillas, koalas and beavers, deer and brontosaurs. So these all are the herbivores. So this is also called as primary consumer. So which consumer which eats the plants is called as herbivores, which consumes herbs like plants. So these are called as herbivores. Carnivore, the animals who only eat other animals. Carnivores, it is animals who only eat other animals. Example, wolf, tiger, lion, hawks. Examples of carnivores are wolf, tiger, lion and hawks. So the carnivorous animals are who only eat other animals. Example, wolf, tiger, lion and hawks. So omnivores are so eats both plants and animals. So whereas herbivores means the animals, the organisms, the living things which eats plants are called as herbivores. The living things which eats animals, so they are called as carnivores, and omnivores are eats both plants as well as animals. So examples of omnivores are bears, raccoons, humans. So best examples for omnivores are it eats both plants and animals. So like bears, raccoons, humans, squirrel. Other examples are fox, squirrel, skunk and owl, house sparrow. So almost dog and bee. So and cat also. So the almost some these are the examples of omnivores which eat both plants as well as animals. So two types of classification is there. So first classification of consumers is it's a primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Second type of classification is carnivores, omnivores and herbivores. So whereas so first classification primary consumer which eats the first produces the living thing which eats producer, that is called as primary consumer. The living thing which consumes primary consumers are called as secondary consumers. The consumers which consumes secondary consumers, they are called as tertiary consumers. So another type of classification is herbivores, omnivores and carnivores. Herbivores also called as primary consumers, like which eats only plants. Herbivores, so what is the carnivores? The animals which eats only animals, so they are called as carnivores. Omnivores means they eat both animals as well as plants. So this is the classification of consumers. Third one is decomposer. Microorganisms uses enzymes to break down so large molecules into small molecules. Microorganisms uses enzymes to break down dead organisms and releases nutrients to ecosystem. So what is the work of microorganism means these uses the enzymes to break down the dead organisms to useful nutrients which are useful to the ecosystem. So here the microorganisms, they are making a large molecules into small molecules. So the small molecules are nutrients. These are releases nutrients which are very useful for the ecosystem and plants and trees. So examples of decomposers are bacteria, maggots, fungi and worms. Bacteria, fungi and worms, these are examples of decomposers which uses the microorganisms uses enzymes to break down larger molecule to small molecules, or which used to break down the dead organisms, and it releases nutrients, very useful nutrients to the ecosystem. So decomposers are important part of food web. Decomposers are important parts of food web. So examples we know that worm, mushroom, insects and bacteria. So these are decomposers. It will decompose the large molecules into small molecules. So here if we see the food chain is a simplified way to look at the energy that passes from producers to consumers. So if we see the food chain, so this is energy flow. So the energy, so how energy passes from producers to consumers. So this is the way to look at the energy that passes from producers to consumers. So if we see this diagram, so the sun energy, the plants are producing. So the sun is giving sunlight. So by using sunlight, the plants, the producers are producing the energy. That is the chemical energy. They are producing chemical energy by using sun energy. So after that, these producers are consumed by primary consumers like tortoise and some beetle like. After that, these are consumed by secondary, after that, and tertiary. So like this, energy is passes from sun to last, that is sun to last one, that is tertiary. So again after that, this tertiary consumer, so after the decomposes, this will decompose the dead organisms into useful nutrients, which are again useful for the plants, So this is the food chain, so which is giving information about energy passing from sun to again grass. So types of food chain. So we have so many types of food chains. So here, aquatic food chain and terrestrial food chain. Aquatic food chain, this is water related food chains with sea plants and animals. So aquatic food chain, it is a water related food chains with sea plants and also sea animals. So terrestrial food chain means land related. Aquatic, it is water related. Terrestrial means it is land related food chains with land, plants and animals. So whereas aquatic food chain means sea, plants and animals. So for terrestrial food chain, it is related to the food chains with land, plants and also land animals which are present on land. So here, these are the types of food chains, aquatic and terrestrial food chains. Aquatic means water related. So terrestrial means this is a land related food chain. So another one is predator and prey. Predator means the animal that captures and eats other animals. So predator meaning, so here the animal, it is an animal which captures and eats other animals. So examples of predators are owls. So prey, the animal that is captured and eaten. Prey means, so that the animal which is captured and eaten, so that is called as prey. Prey and predator. Prey is the animal which is eaten, which is captured and eaten is called as prey. Predator means the animal that captures the prey and it will eat the animals. This is the terminology of consumers. So food web. So food web, it is a more realistic way of looking at the relationship of plants and animals in an environment. So we have seen the food chain. So this food web means it is a more realistic way of looking at the relationship of plants and animals in an environment. So how plants and animals are related with each other, so that is called as food web. The more realistic way of looking at the relationship of plants and animals. Relationship between plants and animals in an environment. So several food chains are linked together. In food web, several food chains are linked together. Food chain means only one way. So here food web means more number of food chains linked together. So that is called as food web. So predator from one food chain may be linked to a prey of another food chain. So predator from one food chain may be linked to the prey of another food chain. So food web, it is equal to network of interconnected food webs. So food web means network of interconnected food web. So if we see this diagram here, one plant is consumed by like rats and rabbits. So this is one food chain and this is another food chain. So this is consumed by some secondary consumer. So like birds, the eagle. So this and also this rat is consumed by secondary consumer like primary or secondary consumer like snakes. This secondary again by tertiary. So in this case, if we see this first food chain, this is acting as a primary consumer. So if we see this food chain, so it is acting as a tertiary, secondary secondary consumer. So if we see this, so we have three chains. If we see this, so here snake is acting as a primary consumer. So like this, we have three to four food chains. So these are linked to each other. So this is called as food web. So here the several food chains are linked together. So that is called as food web. Food web, it is equal to network of interconnected food webs. So this is a food web example. So already discussed. So plants are consumed by both rats and rabbits. So rabbits are consumed by, so if we see this diagram, this is consumed by eagle. So in this diagram, it is consumed by snake. If we see this rat, this is consumed by two ways. So this is consumed by directly by eagle, and so after that this snake is consumed by snake. This snake is consumed by eagle. So like this, we in this diagram, so 3 to 4 food chains are involved. So this type of food chain interlocking is called as food web. So here this is the differences between food chain, food web. So what are the differences between food chain and food web? What is the comparison? So meaning of food chain is, it is a flow of energy through a single straight pathway from lower trophic level to higher one. Food chain means flow of energy from it is a single straight pathway from lower trophic to higher trophic one. So food web means it is multiple linked food chains. It is a multiple linked food chains through which flow of energy happens in ecosystem. So food chain means it is only single straight pathway. Food web means it is multiple linked food chain through which flow of energy happens. So composition of food chain is, it comprises of just one straight chain, and in food web it comprises of various interconnected food chains. So energy flow in single energy flow in food chain is a single linear pathway of energy and nutrient flow. Only single linear pathway is there in food chain. So whereas in food web, multiple interconnected pathways through which nutrient and energy flow taking place. So in this multiple interconnected pathways, so through which nutrient and also energy flow is taking place. So stability of food chain, if we see the stability, so it increases because of an increasing number of separate and confined food chains. In case of food web, it increases because of the presence of complex food chains. So trophic level, it comprises 4 to 6 trophic levels of different species. So in food web, it comprises multiple trophic levels. So this feed upon different types of organisms, so of lower trophic level. So here trophic level in food web, it comprises multiple trophic levels of different populations of species. So if feeding relationship in food chain, member of higher trophic level feed upon single type of organisms of lower trophic level. So in this, member of higher trophic level feed upon a single type of organisms of lower trophic level. So in this food web, members of higher trophic level feed upon different types of organisms of lower trophic level. So in case of food chain, feeding relationship is, it is a member of higher trophic level feed upon only single type of organisms of lower trophic level. So in case of food web, members of higher trophic level, these feed upon different various types of organisms of lower trophic level. So disturbance is, the whole chain gets affected if just one group of an organism disturbs. So in this feeding, the disturbance of food chain, the whole chain gets affected if just one group of an organism disturbs. Food web, in this food web, if one group of organism is removed, it does not impact the food web, because the members of higher trophic level feed upon different types of organisms of lower trophic levels. So if any disturbance is there, if one group is removed, no problem. So it does not impact the food web. It does not impact the food web. So example of food chain is grazing food chain and detritus food chain. So examples of food chains are grazing food chain and redditors food chain. See here, there is no examples, there is no type of food webs. So this is the comparison of food chain and food web. And this is about food chain and types of food chain, types of consumers, and what the comparison between food chain and food web. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.